intertwine and shadows dance in this twilight somber trance. Candles flicker, weary wicks, ancient echoes, time's cruel tricks, marble figures, frozen pose, amidst the silence sorrow grows. Whispering shadows, secrets keep in the depths where night meets sleep. Underneath the velvet gloom, guardians of the haunted room. Chandeliers and crystal tears reflect forgotten yesteryears, softly chanting distant cries. Through the arches sorrow sighs. Gargoyles watch with stony gaze, guardians of endless maze. Pipe organ's breath begins to rise, filling air with mournful ties. Whispering shadows, secrets keep in the depths where night meets sleep. Underneath the velvet gloom, guardians of the haunted room.
Hello? Yep. Okay, so hello everybody. I am not Lady Red, but I am being a welcome guest on Lady Red's stream. Unfortunately, right now she is having a bit of a technical issue and her voice is not transmitting. So I am here to occupy your time while the puppies play by the back door and make grumbly, squeaky noises and go at it with each other. There is indeed violence, Grimos. There is violence. But yes, Lady Red is tracking that there is an issue currently with her audio transmitting via OBS. That is a valid question, love. Um, all right, she is working it.
Yep, that has fixed it.
There we go. All right.
And the puppies have much to say about it. For some reason, OBS decided that I do not have a microphone. Why it decided this, I do not know, but now I'm here. How are you guys?
Yes, Ed Gauss, the squeaks. You can see the two babies are currently under the door jamb of the patio door, having a good old-fashioned throngling with each other.
Yep, the babies are doing excellently, as you can see, and for better or for worse, they have discovered their voices.
Yeah.
Often at
They
the least
haven't-
useful times. And Lupa just very kindly peed on stream for you, chat. I hope you feel touched. Yeah, yelling at the computer is very important. Good to see you load. And we've got all of the usual suspects. We've got Grimos, we've got Night Owl, we've got Ed Goss, we've got Tired German, we've got Wilf, we've got Eric, and we have a cookie today. Babies, this is not going to be viable if you're just going to be screaming. You might need to go in and intervene with your grandchildren, because oh my goodness.
Indeed, because just they're yelling at each other muchly.
Yes, there is only scream and violence. Perhaps give them some biscuits, and then you can drop the biscuits so that chat will be able to see the puppies because they keep running off screen.
Indeed.
Why are they screaming Tired German? Because they are beagles. And that's what beagles do. Speaking of background music, I should turn that on now that we're on this scene. There we go, and you guys will tell me if it's too loud or too quiet. The beagles exist to balk. It is what they do, and especially when there's another beagle nearby, or, you know, a car door shuts, or other people happen to exist in their vague presence, even if that vague presence is 2 blocks away. And thus you may... They must yell. They must yell.
All of this friend.
So it's been a rough day, chat. It's been a very rough day for a very simple first world problem kind of reason. I hope you're all doing well, and Cookie, please get better soon. It's been a rough day because Monster Hunter Wilds came out today, and I had to work. And now I'm enjoying a lovely stream with you guys, and I've managed to hunt 2 monsters, and that's it. And this is the worst possible thing. So what I thought we might do today is I really want to talk about some important stuff for Shoal, so we're going to work on that. But I did want to do, you know, at least a little bit in the first hour of something not Shoal related. So I thought we might talk about Monster Hunter if I'm not playing Monster Hunter, because it's a rather uniquely built system. And Grandpa Aiden going to have to calm down his grandkids? Yes. Hopefully he's going to drop them some treats, and they're going to have a chew on those, and then hopefully have a rest, because they had a big old half-hour play session outside right before stream. And they've eaten well today, they've played well, they've been yelled at by their parents, they have yelled at their parents in return, they've pinned their mother to the floor. They've been pinned to the floor by their mother, so, you know, hopefully they'll have a rest very shortly.
Meanwhile, Pip has decided that the biscuits that he wants are explicitly the beef-flavored mini biscuits. He doesn't want the normal one.
He just seems at the minute to always want what the babies have.
Yeah, he's become a picky teenager.
I think he wants to go back and have a second childhood.
Yeah? I mean, mood.
Yeah, I can't really blame him for that. So I've stolen Aiden again this week because I think my stream has cursed Parallax, because every week where he's like, okay, I should be good to pop on this week, and I want to talk about Brian Sanderson and his awesome lecture series, and I'm like, hell yeah, we should do that. And then something happens. Parallax has to do real world things, so I think I'm cursing poor Parallax with bad luck. So instead we've got Aiden this week. Though I am planning to steal Lictor for next week, because I have something special I want to do next week.
Yeah.
Ramshackle has joined us, and so has Stormsong. Bad horse in chat. Boop their snoots. They will get some snoot boopage shortly. That can be achieved.
It's just not going to happen on camera, unfortunately.
Not unless they walk up to the fence and they can be booped through the fence, because we are going to try to avoid doing face reveals. Try being the operative word. So yeah, I've stolen Aiden because for those of you who come along on a Wednesday evening, Parallax's curse was called Squick. Yeah, also Squick. Squick is at least an amusing curse to have. I just seem to be cursing him with lack of time. I made a friend who just... Oh, and we've got a Hauser car as well. That's lovely. Okay, so Wednesday nights. For those of you who are able to join us on Wednesday nights, we've been playing through Monster Hunter World with Aloysius and having a wonderful time as he romps around as the toad-licking log Vanderhuge, and we smack things in the face with comically sized anime swords. And, you know, it's been a great time, and for me, Monster Hunter World was my very first Monster Hunter game. The series had never appealed to me prior to World, and then Aiden was deployed, and some friends were playing it and got him to pick it up. And then when he came back from deployment, he got it for me as well, so that we could sit and play through it together. Because you felt kind of a bit lost in the progression because everybody else was ahead of you, right, Aiden?
Oh yeah, and it was one of those things where I was, baby tier hunter with baby tier gear and getting carried by the rest of the team who were already at the Iceborne content. They were already rocking and late game shenanigans, and I'm like, wow, I'm sad. So it needed to happen. I needed somebody at my level to play with.
So Aiden and I played through it together and just had a blast of a time. And we have gone back and touched some of the previous games. We've touched 4. And of course, when Rise came out, I played the crap out of that as well. And it has my favourite monster in it. World has my second favourite monster in it. And we had an absolute blast with it. And I think World is a pretty special game because for a lot of people, it was their break into the series. And went from being, just this sort of not oddball, but not niche, but it wasn't exactly, topping the charts among Capcom's output. And then World came out, and then all of a sudden it's their second most popular series, right behind Resident Evil. So they must have done something right with it, and I think that's kind of worth talking about, because when you step back and look at Monster Hunter, and it was the position I was in before I picked the series up, its world building shouldn't make sense. It's a ridiculous premise that doesn't really work in terms of normal world building and most people's understanding of the world, and yet it has its own internal consistency that makes it really interesting. And I really appreciate how World in particular chose to reveal that world building and the intricacies of the story that you're there for. So, for those of you who've not played through Monster Hunter World, don't watch the Wednesday streams and have no idea, oh hi Corbin, have no idea what I'm talking about. The Monster Hunter series is a series of games where you are given comically large weapons to go and smack kaiju in the face, and then use the bits you carve off of them to make bigger weapons and bigger armor to go and smack bigger things in the face.
It's also a setting where agriculture is a myth because it is ruled by the hunter-gatherer class of monster punchers who bring back literally everything for civilization to thrive, because everything is built off of the bones of the things you murder. Their boats, their homes, their weapons and armor, their food. Like, agriculture doesn't exist.
Yeah. And the meals in Monster Hunter are their own unique thing that we'll probably talk about shortly. And Corbin, you are my favourite child. You are my problem child and my favourite child. You're fine. You're my favourite grandchild, Will. So, you're given these comically large weapons, and you've got a very, very simple but engaging gameplay loop that you can just follow. And it leads you from one thing to the next and it's really good at doing the whole tick box thing in your brain of you've found this new monster, new armor set with new skills attached to it, collect them all, tick it off. Each time you make a piece, it feels very satisfying. So you get some really good positive feedback just from the mechanics. But the world building, as Aiden says, there's not really agriculture in Monster Hunter. And particularly I'm going to be talking about World because that's the game I know the best. The concept is that the guild that runs all of the hunting and protection from big animals in the old world has sent you as part of the 5th Fleet deployment to the new world that hasn't been fully explored yet. People know it's there. They know that elder dragons, which are these forces of nature in beast form, they cross the ocean and they go to the new world, presumably to die. But nobody knows for certain, and that's what the 1st Fleet, the 2nd Fleet, the 3rd Fleet, the 4th Fleet, and now you, the 5th Fleet, have been going over to investigate. So the first fleet that got over there was the initial expedition force. The second fleet was the supply chain. Third fleet was the research dudes. I can't remember what fourth fleet was. Probably the smithing and forge masters. And then, of course, you're the fifth fleet. And you effectively go over there as the player character to become King Idiot of Idiot Island. My personal headcanon for World is that the people they send over to the new world to investigate this are all of the idiotic problem people of the old world. And it's just put them on a boat, send them over there. They'll either conquer that world and be out of our hair, or it will kill them and they'll still be out of our hair. Because everybody in World is a bit of an idiot. They decided it was a great idea to build a forge for smithing weapons with fire on the second floor of an entirely wood-built settlement. And there's gaps in the floor for the sparks to fall down. So it's not exactly the most sane of settings. When you couple this with the fact that you're wielding the ridiculously sized weapons, you're not really farming for foods, you're eating what nature provides, and the food that you're eating, one of the things that Aiden and I like to do when we have company and there's some special event going on, we will we will cook the top tier meal from Monster Hunter World. Not the one from Iceborne, because that amount of cream will kill me. I am lactose intolerant and I will be a dead red if I eat that. But the base world top tier meal, we will make that. This is something that in the game, your character and their little cat companion eat between them before every hunt they go off on. When you make it in real life, it takes 6 people to eat that and you will still have leftovers. As for the handler being the biggest idiot, I agree she's the biggest idiot, but she's not king idiot because she can't corral the other idiots, whereas you can. You are the competent idiot. Blacksmith in Wilds is wearing the world's tiniest crop top, so health and safety hasn't improved. That was a conversation Ida and I were having right before stream started, Wilf. And I was like, well, maybe she does what Nico from Capcom's other series, Devil May Cry, does. And, when she's working, she covers up. No, she doesn't. So, yeah, health and safety has not improved. The diets, I've only managed 2 hunts so far in Wilds. I just have not had time today. I've needed to work, and obviously I want to do the stream with you guys. So I've only done 2 hunts, but I have seen the meal that you have at Isai's village. And one of the things I think I'm going to really like about Wilds is they clearly got some anthropological specialists on board for making this game, because it feels very authentic to certain cultures in the real world, and it's lovely to see that variance. And it made me very, very hungry. You've got hunters doing anime moves with swords that weigh as much of them. Yes, that's got to burn a lot of calories. It has, but, if you're going with, our real world experience that we all base everything off of before we're, given this suspension of disbelief in a fantasy world, which is, of course, what Monster Hunter does, is it suspends your disbelief. But, logically, by our experience of the world, there's just no way you can contain that many calories, even if you're intending to go and spend them. And there's no way you should be able to lift those weapons. And that's going to lead me a little bit later into something about Wilds that I want to discuss, that I'm not sure how it's going to go. But what I loved with World, and why I think it was so successful, is World treated itself as its own individual product, because its intention was to reach a larger audience. It wasn't designed to be a console game. It wasn't designed to be a handheld game. Not that there's anything wrong with that, and the Monster Hunter games that have been on console and have been on handhelds have been very good. I love Rise, and Rise was clearly designed for the Switch specifically. So I don't have an issue with that, but World was trying to be something else. It was trying to be this wide scope, large PC game that took advantage of the power that a PC can have behind it. And as a result, they did exactly what all creative work should do. They respected their audience. They thought about what is it that we are trying to present to the player that's going to engage them, that's going to give them an experience that's next step beyond what they've known with this series before. And they did it so well that they drew in a huge new fan base they didn't have before. And part of that comes from the fact that you don't have to know anything about Monster Hunter to start Monster Hunter World. You do not need to know anything about the previous games. Now, if you do know stuff about the previous games, there's so much stuff in World that's wonderful. References, callbacks to older games, introduction of monsters you fought before, but with new moves and new abilities because of all the new systems that World built in, and that's wonderful. But you don't need to know anything. You are a newly fledged hunter, part of the 5th Fleet, going to this new world that the character you're playing doesn't know much about. So you, the player, not knowing much about it is completely fine, and it's unveiled to you as you go. And it's unveiled to you by building up from the environment first, which I really like. And for those of you who've been here week in, week out, helping me to build Shoal, that's how I like my world building. I really, really, really like to start my world building from the fundamentals of how does the world work before we start putting things into it, because everything's interconnected and affects each other. Now, they didn't go as ridiculous as we have with Shoal. They didn't decide to tell you how many planets are in the solar system, you know, what the gravity is, what the magnitude of the oceans is. That wasn't relevant to what they were there to do. But what they did do was go, okay, we're going to drop you off here, or first of all, on the core point of why this story is happening. We're going to drop you on the Elder Dragon that you're tracking, so that you get an idea.
The giant ambulatory volcano.
Volcano tortoise, yes.
Yeah.
So you're immediately dropped into, you are here for kaiju, you are here for the problems kaiju cause, you're going to fix them with violence, and then it introduces you to the greater world that you have now arrived in with this threat and this engaging, interesting thing that you're here for. So you arrive in the new world and you start in the ancient forest, which is very well named because it is this big, lush forest filled with what we would consider prehistoric trees and animal forms. So immediately you're slipping the audience into the right mindset to engage with what you're trying to put in front of them. By dropping into that very sort of primeval forest, you immediately make it acceptable that, yes, there are giant, almost Parasaurolophus looking things wandering around. They're called Aptonoth. This is perfectly normal, and you can just accept it because it matches immediately. And you've got the most annoying character in the world talking to you, the handler, giving you the names, and sort of she's the person who knows things, and she's relaying it to the character, who's of course relaying it to you. You progress through the ancient forest and you are attacked by monsters as you arrive at the main settlement, and then you meet all the fleets that have come before you, and you start sort of, you know, drifting into the deeper lore of the world. But that introductory sequence is very masterful in how it brings new people into the setting and gives you really good visual shorthand for what this world is about. This world is more like a prehistoric world where everybody are big meaty men with huge weapons, and that's normal, that's fine. Physics clearly doesn't work the same here. Now, whether it's a case of perhaps the environment has a higher oxygen content and that's why people are able to do the ridiculous things that they do, I don't know. But you don't think about it because it's presented so well to you. All right, I can see chat is chattering away. Let's see what you guys have got to say. Turtles all the way down. It's basically a small Australian island. It does feel like that. Literally everything is trying to kill you, and if it's not trying to kill you instantly, it's trying to annoy you to death.
Yep. I mean, that's the New World in a nutshell. It's like a slightly more benign Skull Island, which is basically fantasy Australia. And, you know, the whole goal is be the king of Dumbfuck Island and investigate why volcanic turtle is doing a thing.
Yes, and Ed makes the exact point. Science doesn't need to be a part of every setting. And Monster Hunter isn't designed for that. It is a fantasy setting. It's got weird things going on that are fantastical compared to our real world. And you know, it's a role-playing game that's about having a series of boss fights chained together. Because that's really what Monster Hunter is. It's, what if every single thing that you did in this game was about having a boss fight?
Yeah, they cut out most of the extraneous stuff and made it boss fight the game. Also, to comment, looking at it, Lichter makes a valid point. Geralt's comment in the Witcher crossover event. Where was it? who was it that asked the question? Tired German, anime Conan the Barbarian without magic? Kind of.
Yes.
So there's no magic in Monster Hunter, and Geralt comments on the fact that everybody's like, "What the fuck is magic?" But I mean, it has its own internal consistency that doesn't use magic to justify it. It just says this shit works. This is part of the world you live in. Accept it. And it's like I'm gonna throw a different reference. Watching Final Fantasy VII Advent Children when they're doing all of the fucking crazy, Matrix style wire fighting bullshit no jutsu kung fu moves with freakishly huge weapons. And it's basically just said that no, this is how physics work. Just go with it. This is just physics in our setting. Go with it.
Yeah, and if
That's
something's
that's how it goes.
and if you introduce something well enough that it feels natural to the audience, to the person who's viewing whatever media it is that's in front of them, they won't question it because it's not relevant to do so. And that requires a lot of very consistent background world building and using what you can expect to be the baseline that your audience is coming in from to your advantage, which, as I was saying with the ancient forest, is because it looks like a primeval forest with dinosaur-like monsters in it, you're immediately taking something that most people will be familiar with and using that to hand-wavy them stuff that doesn't need to be thought about. This is just how this world works. You're already in the right mindset, you're seeing dinosaur-like things in a dinosaur-like forest, you're going to be fine with the fact that we're going to show you an Anjanath, which is basically a really angry T-Rex that, wants to eat you.
Has a head cold.
Yeah, and the other giant lizard that it's currently fighting, and you just accept it because there's no reason for you not to. So it's really cleverly done. The fact that they then build the ecosystem through the rest of the game to work the way it does, I find absolutely fascinating and a masterclass in world building for the type of media that it is, because you progress into the Coral Highlands through time, and the Coral Highlands looks like the bed of an ocean with all the water drained out. It's very colourful. You've got these bright corals, you've got things drifting through the air in the same way that they would be drifting through the water if the water was there. It's very vibrant. The whole area is very vertical. You've got a lot of up and down to it. Yep, there's jellyfish floating about, which is great, and you never bother asking, well, how are they doing that? Because it's not relevant to the kind of setting you're there for.
Yeah,
so you move
doesn't
into
matter.
this beautiful area, and it's all making sense in its own internal consistency. And then you move down to the Rotten Vale. And the Rotten Vale is where you get, for people who've played the older games, a really nice reference, because the Rotten Vale is built on the corpse of a enormous elder dragon that's been encountered in previous games. But what matters with the Rotten Vale in terms of world is that all that vibrant life you've just come from above in the Coral Highlands, where everything's beautiful and colourful and bright and just full of life, is fueled by the Rotten Vale, where everything comes to die. And you've got life forms that feed on that death. You've got scavengers, you've got predators who will ambush those scavengers and each other. And it's this cycle of life, which is, of course, the theme that World is there to tell. It's talking about the cycle of life, how death leads to new life, and humanity's place in that. Albeit, we're viewing it through a very strange version of humanity that can eat 6 people's worth of calories and wield a buster sword, and that's just normal. But the point is the same, is that, a life cycle is a very important thing. It's very foundational. And if you interfere with it badly, you're going to end up with some massive problems that just continue to have knock-on problems. And that's the story of World, is your character and the people around them figuring out where their place is in the new world. And there's a wonderful comment made by the commander's son, who was born on the new world. He makes a comment at one point where he points out that humanity is part of the food web as well and has the right to exist, but it's finding that balance, which in a game game about smacking monsters in the face and cutting their, tails off to wear as a fancy hat to go and beat up another monster is a surprisingly wholesome and relevant and important message. And you'd think these two things would be incongruous, but it's not, because the setting that it's being presented through, it makes sense that it works that way.
I want to interject at this point to make a observation based on what Lichter is saying, and he makes an incredibly valid point. The presentation in World works the way it does because they do a lot of show don't tell rather than doing exposition dumps. I mean, there are some to move the plot forward, but generally they're very tastefully done. But for the setting itself, just, giving you the basic understanding of the world you're in, it's very much shown, not told. And this leads me to something that we've kind of touched on in previous streams, but that I think is worth pointing out. Different mediums have different needs as far as how to really get the point across.
Yeah, and different stories can have different needs as well.
Yes.
We talked last week, I was going on and on and on and having a big old rant about prologues, and one of the prologues we talked about that was very good was the Lord of the Rings prologue, which is just pure exposition on world building and history and etc. But because of the kind of book that it's made for, it works and it's really, really good. That wouldn't work for World. It's a different medium, it's a different kind of story, it's a different kind of impetus and importance that you're there for. So the show don't tell is really, really important and works really, really well. So I think that's partly why World was so successful, is that it was so well crafted and easily accessible for a new audience. And that for the existing audience, it really gave them something to sort of bite their teeth into with these familiarities. And of course, we're now seeing the sequel coming out in the form of Wilds, which, while not a narrative sequel, the scope and the intended audience and what they're doing with the game is very much in line with the methodology of World rather than Rise, which I feel was more like a handheld. It was the next in the line of handheld Monster Hunters, and brilliant for it, but it was much more segmented, its scope was much smaller, and it did a brilliant job with its theming of just going, okay, we're going to put you in a small village in feudal Japan, but also with the giant weapons and everything else. They really brought the scope down, but made what they presented extremely tight and extremely well themed, and it was just as good, just as enjoyable, and I have more hours than I should really admit to in Rise. Plus, of course, they did the most amazing thing in Rise. They took the universal horror cycle and made them kaiju.
They did, and that just so much yes.
Would you like to tell chat about the awesomeness of the kaiju horror cycle?
I will in just a moment, but first commenting, looking at what Cookie Mama had to say. So not FF10. Yeah, pretty much, because again, they did a lot of what they did through exposition and dialogue, whereas in Monster Hunter, they basically just let you go out and see the thing do what it do. Like, you understand you're on Skull Island from the moment a T-Rex with a head cold picks up the giant lizard you're running from and proceeds to suplex the shit out of it like it's trying out for a wrestling program. Note to self, talk to Howls about monsters in wrestling.
No, we already banned Godzilla for being too damn big.
That is fair. As far as the universal monsters in Monster Hunter, that actually again goes into the show not tell, because some of the most memorable quests in Monster Hunter Rise happen because of those things. Because there's 3 new creatures that they introduce, one after the other. Garangolm is the first, if I remember right. Then it's Lunagaron, and then Malzeno are the names of them. But anybody who's watched any of the old Universal Studios monster movies are going to know them as Frankenstein's monster, the Wolfman, and Dracula. Yes, it's in Sunbreak, but okay, look. I don't call it Monster Hunter World Iceborne, I just say Monster Hunter World, because by this point, if you're not playing Iceborne, then you're missing out on literally 50% of the game, Lichter. Just saying.
Yeah, but Director does make the good point. For anybody who wishes to investigate this, it is in the Sunbreak additional content, which again, Iceborne for Monster Hunter World, worth every penny you'll pay for it. Sunbreak for Monster Hunter Rise, worth every penny you'll pay for it.
So you go and throw hands. Admittedly, Garen Golm doesn't have too much of a lead in or introduction to it. You go in and you're fighting this giant gorilla monster with stone fists whose body shape tells you the cylinder head style of Frankenstein's monster.
Yeah, but
And-
it's like Frankenstein's monster combined with King Kong.
Exactly. But then you get to go throw hands with Lunagaron, and again, in the vein of different things, it's like having an author who's paying attention to the little details in the prose to allow you to fill in the gaps of what's being said by reading between the lines. It's the way an author can make a very evocative setting without explicitly telling you what it is. The Lovecraft problem, how do you describe the indescribable, comes to mind. Well, you don't. You describe adjacent to it and then let people fill in the blanks. When you go fight Lunagaron, you go enter in, and normally when you enter into the map, you have background music, you have everything is generally, whatever time of day, the same colors you expect. So, a daytime hunt, you'll have the sun shining and all the colors, and the local wildlife are doing their thing because you have, the small monsters wandering around, the local endemic life just kind of schmucking about for you to interact with. You show up to this quest, dead silence, very ominous but very subdued background music that tells you something is incredibly wrong, and there is not a sign of life anywhere except the little red motes hanging in the air out of reach that are the little flying parasite things that you at this point don't really know what the heck they are. So you're looking around like, what in the actual fuck is going on? This is a horror movie, not a monster hunt quest. Oh crap. And they build it up, and this is all in service to you fight then what is a wolf-shaped monster that can then grow longer frozen claws and stand up on its hind legs and fight you like a werewolf. And then you figure out the cause of the reason everything's gone full horror movie is because goddamn Dracula in dragon form is kicking about, and as far as your understanding goes, it's responsible for all of the weird shit that's going on, to include the red lights, the horror movie vibe, the things that are driving all of the local wildlife bug fuck insane. And all of this before you ever so much as even see the thing. You know something screwy is happening and there's a really bad thing going down. So when you find Malzeno, it is stately, it is regal, and it looks like a goddamn vampire if it was a dragon.
And it also has some of Dracula's moveset from Castlevania, which is a trip in and of itself, and that there may or may not have been some squeeing in the Desir household when we realised that.
Oh god, yes. The moment it did the teleport shoot fireballs thing at you, I was in my happy place. I was very much in my happy place. But all of the build-up takes place over multiple quests where you've got a continual theme of Universal Studio monsters made into Monster Hunter monsters. And without having to beat you over the head with dialogue to tell you something's fucky, they let you realize, holy crap, shit's getting real, and getting real in a horror movie vibe. So that when you finally do punch Dracula in his beautiful dragon face, it has all of the weight it's supposed to. 100% they set the stage, and it has impact when you actually throw hands with this thing, because you've had the chance to see its impact on the world. Without having to see it do its shit, you understand what it's doing.
And then you find out that, you thought you'd solved this? You thought we were done? Psych, you're not, because Primordial Malzeno exists. But for anybody who hasn't played Rise, I strongly suggest you do, and I'll let you find out about that part for yourselves. So, Monster Hunter's world building, I feel, is just particularly excellent. And we're seeing a lot of that again now with the new one that's just come out today, Wilds. What I'm really curious about with Wilds is where they're going to take this whole plot line with the concept of hunters and tools and weapons not being something familiar to the people of the area that you're in. So for anybody who hasn't been following stuff going on with Wilds, the concept of this one is you're back in the old world, and this is an area of the old world that hasn't been broached for an extremely long period of time. I think 1,000 years or something like that, they said. It's an area of the world that has been considered uninhabited and just too dangerous. However, some initial research into the fringes of it was going on, and they found a young boy. And they rescued this young boy who was dehydrating in the desert that's the edge of this new area, and he's trying to get back to his family. And so it turns out the area is inhabited by people who haven't had contact with the other civilizations of the old world for 1,000 years. And
10,000 years ago into the future. Sorry, I couldn't
so
help myself.
you're going in as, and what's nice about Wilds is it's expecting that its audience is probably going to have played World and Iceborne. So unlike in World and Iceborne, where you're coming in as a new hunter who doesn't know anything about the place that you're going to, you're coming in as an experienced hunter going to a place that you don't know anything about, and you're going in with a team of people, and thankfully a handler who so far has been much more personable and enjoyable than the one in World.
Oh God, yes. Because she's not an imbecile trying to throw herself into the jaws of, the nearest angry predator purely to give you a damsel in distress to try and go and rescue.
And her hobbies and interests match up with what she's doing as a job and are relevant to what's going on instead of being a detriment, which is wonderful.
Which we could spend a while just talking about character development
Yes.
in the I mean development as in character creation for making somebody interesting without being dumb.
Yes, and I think that'll be a good conversation to have when we get down to making individual characters for Shoal later on, named characters we know we want in the world. Hello, Shadow Legion. Pleasure to see you. Could somebody drop the Discord link for me, please? If you enjoy the nonsense that goes on here, we have a Discord where more nonsense goes on. And if you don't like my nonsense, good news. This is a variety channel, and there are myriad other people who do far more interesting things.
Yep, we had last night Castlevania for a couple hours, Placid Plastic Duck Simulator. Sunday nights is a wrestling show.
We have all of
We've
the
got
things. So,
Cooking
welcome in.
streams, gaming streams, writing streams, art and painting streams. There's a little bit of everything. Like, holy crap.
So the thing that I'm finding really interesting with Wilds is these people who haven't been in contact with the other civilizations for, 1,000 years. You turn up as a competent hunter who's helping with this expedition. Oh, did I? Is that better?
You're not transmitting.
I wonder why, because my headset...
There you go. Okay, now you're back. So we lost you as you turn up.
Yeah, you turn up as a competent hunter, coming into this new area that people don't know anything about, trying to get this boy back to his family, and, investigate and discover about this region that's been thought to be uninhabited and unbroachable for all of these years. Well, clearly that's not the case, so you're here to do research, get this boy home. You are competent, go in with all of these other people and sort it out. And so you turn up and you get to pick your chosen weapon type. The correct answer is dual blades.
No, it's not. You hush.
So you turn up and you've got your weapon on your back, and everybody that you run into in the initial sort of hour of the game are really surprised. What?
So looking at chat, apparently you were transmitting. For some reason, Discord wasn't picking you up, but OBS was.
Okay, well,
Weird.
Biden was having problems.
Yeah, okay.
Can we
whatever.
spend just one moment to appreciate how good the Meowscular Chef and Chef Mama are? Absolutely. And the food in Monster Hunter always looks so appetizing, and Meowscular Chef is just fantastic.
So again, on character, making a interesting character, you know everything you need to know about the Meowscular chef, despite the fact that you barely talk to him. Like, the
Rants is
dude
all about
gets...
his gains, and he wants you
He
to have
is.
gains too.
He is, and he is like the ultimate Iron Chef, except I can only shudder at the amount of cat hair in your food.
Yeah,
Just,
technical difficulties is what OBS, Twitch, and the BPL runs on, and it's fine. It's fine.
oh yeah.
There isn't an obligatory asshole for dramatic tension in your team. They're an actual team, yes, which is very, very nice. It's that cooperative element is a really, really nice thing. So, Wilds. You turn up with your weapon, and these people who haven't had contact with everybody else for all of these years, they're really surprised by the fact that you can take down monsters and that you've got these weapons. And this is the point that I'm a little bit hung up on this at the minute and keen to see where they go, because this is a concept that for me is going to need some really good exposition as we go through the story to make sense, because my suspension of disbelief is struggling with this point. The concept of weapons and tools is a fundamental human element, and it doesn't matter what setting you're in, tool use is just a fundamental part of the human experience. It's one of the things that separates us from the other animals that we share our world with, is we have a degree of sentience that allows us to problem solve. It allows us to take elements of our environment, whether it's something as simple as a rock to throw, all the way up to, you know, the incredible things that we make in the modern day, and the fact that we can now journey into space. We are a tool-using species. Our brains are developed to problem solve in that way, and it's something that has continued evolutionarily because it's so useful. And in a world where you've got these huge monsters that are a problem, and you need to have areas that you can be safe. You need the fundamental Maslow's pyramid of needs. That pyramid of needs is really hard to achieve when you've got giant kaiju tromping about all over the place. You need to be able to deal with them. So the concept of using tools, and therefore, of course, weapons, is kind of inherent. And maybe part of this as well is coming from the many years of me working in childcare as well. One thing I can tell you about the human experience is, if you take a child and give them no exposure to, you know, Power Rangers or the news or G.I. Joe, you give them no exposure to the concept of guns and weapons, and you just give them, you know, wholesome stuff, and as soon as they're old enough, you get them into nursery. The first day they turn up at nursery, by the end of that day, if that child has not found some way to turn, you know, Duplo bricks into a gun, or picked up a stick and it's a gun, there is something wrong with that child. It's just this inherent thing. And they might not call it a gun if they haven't had that exposure. You know, it might be a sword or whatever. But they pick up things from the other children that are there. But the concept of having conflict and problem solving, especially in a new environment, is just kind of built into us. So
So I have my theories on what they're going with.
before I let you go on to that, what I'm interested to see is if this is going to be a case of the concept of any weapon is going to be just strange to these people, and that I will really struggle with, or whether it's a case of the problem solving that they've had access to prior to now have been things that aren't effective against the monsters. And they do have the concept of weapons, they do have the concept of tools. I mean, clearly they have the concept of some tools that are around them. We've seen that, you see that in the first hour readily. And it's just the type of tools and the effectiveness that's going to turn out to be the thing that's strange to them. Or whether it, and that I will find a lot more believable. So what are your theories, Aiden?
So you just touched on them, honestly. Is the theory is it's not so much tool use as it and weapon use as it is the concept of something that can be used to throw happy slaps with a large monster and have a, you know, meaningful ability to do something. Also, to interrupt real quick, We got a first-time chat in the form
Oh,
of Agent Jolly
wonderful.
Pubar, who is catching a WBPLW stream for the first time
Oh
and
God,
asking
and you
how we're
chose
doing.
mine as a start. I'm so sorry. Welcome in. Pleasure to have you here. As you know what the stream is, I'm assuming you are familiar with the greater community. If not, I can see that Grimos has dropped the Discord link. Please do come and join us over there. It's a fun time. We have some chaos over there. Tired
Any
German
shenanigans.
says, I think in that case it is more that they haven't found the same weapon concepts. Yeah, and if that's what it turns
Yeah.
out to be, that will be a lot more believable, and I'll have no issue with that. Though there is a part of me that's like, come on, surely in 1,000 years of time, somebody found parts of a dead monster that another monster had killed, and at least thought maybe this will work. Turning teeth, I mean, one of the things that humanity's been doing ever since we first invented the concept of put stone on stick, make pointy stick, is collecting fossilized megalodon teeth, and using those as a cutting implement. Of course, flint knapping, etc., etc. Tooth on spear has got to be natural, correct?
Yeah.
So
But
it
at
will
the
be
same
interesting. But I can, for the kind of world that it is and the story they want to tell, if it's something like, they just haven't reached the specific kinds of weapons that you're bringing into the area and how to make them, that I can suspend my disbelief for.
Yeah, and that's what I suspect they're gonna go for, is they haven't figured out how to make weapons that can fend off the big critters, as opposed to, tools that they can use to do things with smaller critters and build shelters and hideaways that are, safe from by dint of environmental effects and impact, rather than, having roid-raged maniacs powered by dead chickens going out and unga-bungaing the big thing until the big thing gives up and dies.
Yes. So that's where I'm at with Wilds at the minute. As I say, it's today has been a struggle, chat. All I want to do is go and punch giant chickens with the dead parts of other giant chickens and make myself a new hat. But I've been really good. I played a little bit this morning, and I put it down, and I played with the puppies, and then I did some work, and then I got ready for stream, and I'm not going to touch it until after stream tonight.
Which is really nice, because it means that she isn't leaving me in the dust because I had to do work things today and I've only done half of what she has. So, quote the chicken sentences, please.
Lictor says hunters are superhumans in universe. Yeah, I mean that law isn't readily apparent on the surface of world, which is really where I wanted to sort of build what I was talking about today off of. But yes, if you go into the entirety of the Monster Hunter series, there's a lot in there to pick through and unpack, and it's amazing. So that was my sort of Monster Hunter fix that I desperately needed today. I thought we'd get through a bit quicker than we have, but there's a lot to talk about, and chat, you are wonderful as ever. But I do want to do some Shoal things with you guys today, and
definitely.
there's some things I want to go over, some things I've added in, and I want to get your feedback on, some things people have said in the Shoal chat on the Discord, some things to toss around, and from looking at where the interest with you guys is, because you guys have been absolutely fantastic. Are we punching monsters? Sure, we can punch monsters, Hazukai, at any time. But with Shoal, there's some things I want to look over, and I think we need to perhaps today have a very basic talk about the coral, and then start talking about our people who live on Shoal, our merfolk, because some of you have been interested in beginning to write some sort of myths and lore that they might believe in. Some of you have been talking about what forms they might take, and the things that you want to do there, how the civilizations interact. We've talked about trade and transport already, all of which of course will go later on to inform our mecha. And I think we have enough of the basis of the world built over the last few weeks that we can sort of work with the evolutionary pressures we know are going to be here and sort of build up from there. And I don't want to bore you guys because you feel like things are going too slowly and you can't do the things that you want to do. So there's that. But I also want to, you know, engage you guys' interest and your brilliant ideas when we're in the moment, because that's where some of the best ideas have come from. Like the Pearl thing from a couple of weeks ago. That was just pure brilliant. Oh, there is something I want to show you guys as well today. We have the wonderful Lictor in chat who has drawn the most precious thing that I'm going to show to you guys in a little bit, but just before we move on to dealing with our peoples. And oh my god, it's adorable. I can't wait till we get to a point where we can start illustrating the compendium. It's going to be a lovely time. And spoiler chat, I'm going to try and steal Lictor next week for a bit of a special writing stream. We are coming up in a few days' time on, unfortunately, the anniversary of Sir Terry Pratchett passing away, and I really want to talk about Discworld and Pratchett's work and his influence, and I'm hoping to steal Lictor to join me for that. We're going to get to all of those questions, Grimos. Whale shark transports, yeah, we can talk about that as well. Coral mythic aspects of the song and scale, divine manifestation. But yeah, we've got a lot going on here that I definitely want to go over. So let me actually bring up Shoal in front of me. So what I did this week on my day that I dedicated to just building some Shoal stuff and doing some different things, I really wanted to hammer into the introduction and the basic world, a lot of the stuff that we've already gone over, because I felt like there was some stuff that was missing, some stuff that needed sorting out and writing down. So what I did was I went through, I looked at each section, and everything that we'd done beforehand I felt was in a good place. I felt we needed to make mention in an early part of the compendium about the fact that there's not much land on Shoal, and sort of codify what we'd said before we get into more detailed description of those continents later on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through all the different things that I've added in. I'm going to read them, and you guys can let me know if you think it's bad, if anything needs to come out, if you think anything needs to be changed or added to, or whether you're happy with it, because this isn't just my setting, this is our setting. So I've added in the section Rare Land. Shoal boasts very little land for its surface area, with most of its rock and stone hidden beneath deep blue waves. Two large land masses located around the temperate equatorial band of the moon world harbour the main extent of Shoal's land-based life, but it is a paltry amount compared to what resides in the oceans. These two land masses also boast immense lakes as a result of accumulated rainfall on ground that rarely reaches mountainous heights tall enough to lock away water as ice. The polar regions of Shoal experience greater cold than the rest of the moon, as one may expect, and they are capped with resplendent white ice sheets. Land indeed resides under this thick glaze of ice, in what small way that may matter. After all, should the ice melt, the water levels on Shoal would engulf the rock much as the rest of the world. Nevertheless, the great ice sheets provide a living space for intrepid species adapted to the cold. The final land one may find on flying over Shoal is strings of rough islands just poking above the water. Predominantly found in the crag-bound sea, these islands are but fleeting dalliances above water born from the volcanic fissures below the waves. These islands erupt from the ocean in sprays of steam and shattered rock, drift with the moon's tectonics for a short distance before vanishing back beneath the waves as the inevitable wear and tear of surf crumbles them back from whence they came. Little lives on these sterile and foreboding islands, but they are used by some avian creatures as rest stops or nesting grounds for the brief time they remain above water. So that's my sort of description of land, and yes, rock and stone. I did choose my words carefully there.
You did.
You did, in fact, chat, hear a rock and stone. So how do we feel about that sort of description of what land is like on Shoal? Are we good with that? I'm going to have a sip of drink for just a moment. The next section that sounds good to Eric? Good. The next section that I really wanted to flesh out, especially as I knew that this week I wanted to start talking about the people of Shoal, is I wanted to detail its seas. We knew at some point we were going to look at breaking the world up. We know we've got our land masses and that they're their own thing, but for all, Shoal has effectively a unified ocean because there is so little land. The ocean is what matters in this setting, so it would still make sense for it to be broken up. And I mean, even on our own world, we break up our oceans into, the seven seas, etc., etc. It's good, but it does make the previous land animals all the rarer. The land animals that we put together, we designed to fit that 2 land mass pattern, and none of them are so overly huge or abundant that it shouldn't work. So I think we'll be okay with regards to the animals. So we did have this in mind when we balanced the land ecosystem. Broad and open for minor modifications for stories. Yes, that is of course the ultimate thing. Is for all a compendium is a book of facts about a setting, you do always want to try and leave that space in there for future creativity to flow in. When we get to industry that will affect land, we can deal with that later. Absolutely. I think that's going to be an important thing, is to not worry about that until we get to the technology section. If we can subdivide our blobs of land, then we can break up their blobs of sea. Absolutely. So I had to think about that. And I didn't want there to be too many seas, because then it's going to get hard to keep track of. Especially as you can't sort of break it up in the same way that you break up countries in the real world, because depth is going to play into things. And that makes it very easy in some ways to make a smaller number of places have double the meaning, because you can have, you know, the shallow Crimson Wall or the deep Crimson Wall, depending on what you're doing. So I went through and I had to think about what I felt the different seas should be. I'll read them to you guys. You can let me know what you think. And of course, we can adjust this. And I do desperately want feedback from you guys. So the oceans may be contiguous, but there could still be variations in water temp, salinity, chemical makeup, and so on, creating distinct regions. I know the real sea has surprisingly large variations despite all being connected. Yes, very much so, very much so. So let me read to you guys what I've done, and then you can let me know what you think. So we now have a section called Myriad Seas. As a moon made up primarily of water, Shoal boasts what could be considered a nigh unbroken ocean. Despite this, the people of Shoal and Offworlders have come to know certain regions as their own individual areas for ease of reference. Shoal Seas. Northern Waters. A simple name, but it serves a simple purpose. The Northern Waters encompasses the expanse of ocean around and beneath the northern polar landmass and its ice sheets. Southern Waters. As above, the Southern Waters encompasses the southern polar region. The Crimson Wall. One of the most easy to spot points on Shoal's surface, this section of the ocean is created from a large wound in the planetary crust, which spews hot, mineral-rich water into the upper ocean. I missed an S off there. There we go. Rust-coloured algae and microorganisms adapted to the heat thrive here and stain this section of the sea a ruddy red with their presence. And that was based on a suggestion in chat from a couple of weeks ago. The Abyssal Crescent. Another clear mark on Shoal's surface, the crescent is similar to the wall in that it marks a scar on Shoal's ocean floor. But while the wall spews out heated minerals and life, the crescent is instead an inert plunge from the shallower series of rock shelves into a deep, deep crescent-shaped trench that plunges to some of the deepest parts of Shoal's oceans. A dark and quiet zone, many large animals journey here to die, and it is known that the depths of this ominous ocean location contain ancient coral and equally ancient leviathans. The Crag-bound Sea. A shallower area of Shoal, the Crag-bound Sea describes the volcanically active area in which new islands are born from frequent eruptions, only to be worn down by tidal stress and rain. This sea, of course, sits on a tectonic plate line and can be quite unstable during eruptive seasons. It is a region of constantly shifting tides and unpredictable currents, where underwater mountains rise and fall dramatically, which creates ever-changing waters. Notorious for harsh and unpredictable conditions, the crag-bound sea often spawns great whirlpools and tidal surges, requiring expert navigation from those who wish to venture through the sea. Starblaze Shoals. One of the most shallow areas of Shoal's Grand Ocean, this zone is known for its bioluminescent life and thus its glow during the dark periods of Shoal's close year. Serpent Strait. This stretch of ocean lays between Shoal's 2 major land masses, and while it describes the serpentine shape of the waters, it is also a zone known to be inhabited by many species of sea snakes. It is a very dangerous stretch of water, and the presence of land disrupts the otherwise steadfast currents found elsewhere on Shoal. The Mistvale Seas. An area filled with perpetual mist on the surface where visibility is poor and strange currents play tricks on sailors and navigators. The area is named for the dense supernatural fog that rolls across the waters, obscuring both the horizon and the depths below. Vessels are often swallowed by the mist, only to emerge in unexpected places. This region is said to house hidden reefs and sunken temples that are nearly impossible to find without a guide. The legends of elusive sea creatures and strange phenomena are common here. The Stormlance Sea. Encompassing much of the equatorial zone, this area is known for its violent sudden storms and violent electrical activity. I need to adjust that because I've used the same word twice in very close succession. You can't use violent twice. Doesn't sound right. Due to converging weather patterns. The Stormlance Sea is an area consistently lashed by violent storms, with thunderclouds and lightning strikes that seem to strike the water almost at will. The Silver Current. A final sea venerated by Shoal's people, but not one visible from the surface of Shoal. The Silver Current is Shoal's massive core current that flows like a river through the ocean, creating distinct waves of motion in the water. It is a strong, swift underwater river that moves through Shoal, its current always flowing in the same direction, creating a pathway for merfolk and sea creatures alike to travel long distances quickly. The water in this current shimmers with a silvery hue due to the unique algae and plankton that thrive here, and the metallic elements of the transports and vehicles of Shoal's people as they ply along the current's length. The current is a vital trade route for merfolk, who have built cities on the banks of the Silver Current's flow. It is much easier to travel downriver on the current than returning upstream, with many species and traders choosing to travel the whole current as a loop rather than go against the natural flow. So, that was where I got with describing the seas. What do you guys feel about that? Blackfire Gaming says seas or oceans possibly demarcated in part by large-scale land masses like the Dogger Bank or the underwater mountains and lines in the sand could absolutely be where the line of demarcation is for some of these. Thank you for the other synonymous suggestions. I will slot one of those in at some point. With the increased waves on Shoal, rogue waves will be even more terrifying. Yes, we know that thanks to our wonderful Ninja Turtle, who made the beautiful simulation of the orbit of Luastra, the gas giant, the moons around it, which includes Shoal and you know, all of its siblings. He made a wonderful model, and that revealed that the tidal stress on Shoal will generally be one measure of magnitude higher than on Earth, but can cap out under the right conditions at 2 orders of magnitude higher. So yes, waves on this would be they're going to be pretty devastating. I'm trying to understand how big some of these seas would be. Until we decide to do ourselves perhaps a map to fit these in and where we think they should be, that's hard to say. But of course, the thing that's really going to make how big some of these seas are conceptually different to writing other settings is we've got an extra dimension to move in, because you've also got depth. How deep does that sea go? So that's going to be interesting. Is the supernatural elements in the Mistveil Seas actually supernatural? I'm thinking that possibly there is a particularly ancient coral growth there that's responsible for the confusion, and maybe that's something that the people of Shoal haven't entirely uncovered yet, so it still sort of exists in myth as this sort of strange and secretive place, but it's actually just, you know, Shoal's natural nonsense going on, just at a more extreme level. But that's absolutely something that we can discuss, and maybe that's just what the culture believes, but they know it's not real. Let's put the crag-bound sea south of the 2 land masses, not close south, but close enough that the turbulent straits spit things out into the calm waters between them and the crag-bound. Yeah, we could do that. That could be a understanding. So the Silver Current is a whole loop. Does it go equatorial or up and down? Because it seems like the area inside the loop could be its own thing. When I'm thinking of the loop there, what I'm thinking about is how our ocean currents work. Because one of the things that's really critical to ongoing life in our oceans, and I think will be very critical to Shoal, is you need shallow water to dive down deep and deep water to come up shallow. That's achieved on our planet by the rotation of our seasons, heating and cooling, as well as, of course, the interference of land masses driving water in certain different directions. That provides the circulation of our planet for life to continue. And if that was to ever break down, it would be devastating. So when I'm thinking about the Silver Current, I'm thinking about it being both I mean, it's obviously going to be equatorial at places, but it is going to need to venture north and south as well. And the depth is the most important thing, is that it's going to need to be able to do that diving down and resurging. Ancient Angie coral makes sense. Yeah. Ancient Angie. One of the most important things with what we're doing with Shoal is we know what our unique thing is for Shoal. And applying that into being a consistent theme that we're reinforcing and paying respect to is what will make it more believable. May not have a plan for that area as well. We could have entire trading communities that exist on the silver current, as in the entire community moves with the current. Yes, a nomadic group that lives on the silver current would absolutely make sense. I think that would be a really interesting thing to have. So what I'm getting from the feedback I'm getting from you guys is that you're pretty happy with the concept of these seas. And, you know, the PDF is up with these bits already plugged into it. You can access it on the Discord. Iden, would you do a link to the Discord for me, please, to Shoal specifically on the Discord? And would you pin it? So you guys can access this information at any point, and you are always welcome to either at me or DM me or just write in the general Shoalnanigans chat any additions you think should go in, any critiques that you have. I'm very open to continuing to talk about this outside of stream time and making sure that this is truly a community built setting. Oh, have we, Cookie? Okay, don't grab the link. Don't grab the link. I am happy to hold off on that. I had not received that command from on high, but if you head onto the Discord, look in the creative writing section, there are specific channels for Shoal. One of them has the resources in it, so you can grab the PDF, and one of them is the chats that I pay attention to. I check it at least once a day, so if you've got ideas, if you've got things you want me to see, you're going to find them in there, and that's the place to do it. All right, let's move on to the next section. So we've talked about the tide on Shoal, that it's going to be this really important facet. We know that the tides are going to be stronger than they are on Earth. So I had a thought about, you know, how are we going to talk about tides, what's going to be important to the people of Shoal, how are we going to do this? And I had a bit of a think and I had a bit of a write. So I'm going to do that whole thing where I read to you guys again and you can let me know what you think. Shoal's tides are a vital element of life and a key aspect of the world. An order of magnitude larger than those of Earth, Shoal experiences tides averaging 6 metres higher than Earth's populace are familiar with, which increases the tidal zones of its scant land masses significantly. Without vast swathes of land to break up the ebb and flow of water around Shoal, plus of course the complex gravitational pulls of its planetary neighbours and siblings, Shoal's tides weave a complex dance that rushes and drifts mostly unimpeded. While the interference of land, plus the heating and cooling caused by the sun, generate many of the oceanic conditions that have allowed life to flourish on Earth, Shoal's deep to shallow to deep sea flow is dictated by the active volcanism of the moon, as well as the strong cooling effects of the gloam and tenebrous seasons, including around the poles. Key tides. Below is a list of some of the key tidal moments important to Shoal and its peoples. High tide. Similar to a high tide on Earth, a Shoalian high tide is caused by the gravitational pull of its most influential stellar companion, Luastra. While the moon pulls Earth's oceans to create a bulge twice a day as the planet spins, so too is Shoal affected by Luastra. The highest average daily tide anywhere on Shoal comes when that point is facing Luastra, with a smaller high tide occurring at the opposite end of the day due to fluid dynamics. Low tide. As the above, low tide on Shoal occurs at the halfway point between high tides as the pull of Luastra to create a bulge in the oceans draws water away from an area. Low tide is particularly important for land creatures who rely on exposed sandbanks to survive. Soft tide. With so many companions moving through space alongside it, Shoal can have some complex tidal arrangements. A so-called soft tide occurs when the presence of other moons around Luastra reduces the residual height of a tide. Harsh tide. The opposite to the soft tide, harsh tides occur when the pull of other moons increase the energy of a given tidal flow. Ghost tide. While not technically a unique or individual facet of Shoal's ocean dynamics, ghost tides occur when the normal tidal pattern is enhanced by the flow of deep waters to the surface during a bloom event. Bioluminescent creatures ascend from the deeper oceans during a ghost tide, colouring vast swathes of the ocean in glowing light like banded ribbons. For many, once they reach the warmer surface waters to fulfill the spawning section of their life cycle, this is a final act. Following a ghost tide, the dead slowly drift back to the depths if not consumed by other creatures. While this tidal feature is named for the sorrow of passing in the dead, it is of course a herald of new life to come and thus a very enjoyable event for the people of Shoal. Did I use descend where I should have used ascend? No, I think I've got ascend in the right place. The bioluminescent deep creatures ascend during a ghost tide and then drift back down after they die. I think I've got it the right way around. You guys will correct me if I'm wrong. How do we feel about that? How do we feel about those tides? Goodness, 41 of you here listening to me witter on. Absolutely fine, Bully Snake. I mean, the fact that you put up with me wittering, I appreciate it. Okay, so we're pretty much on board, it seems, at the moment for where we're going with this. I still think this world is making a lot of sense, and we've got enough space for creativity. Would harsh tides be sudden and quick? I suspect so, Quinlist. I suspect so. Basically like an earth and coral bloom, but for deep sea creatures. Yes. Yes, very much so, Tired German, and making use of that whole concept of deep to shallow to deep life cycle that's really important for ocean life. So one of the other things that I did was look at the unique extremes that Shoal has to deal with that have really influenced the life that lives on here. The information that's here was mostly taken from the section where I was writing about land-based life. So this is the section that sort of talks about the fact that we've got a lot of radiation, why it's here, the Van Allen belts, and the fact, of course, that we've got the coral. I'm not going to bother reading this bit out because it's just literally codifying stuff we've talked about before. I just moved where it was in the write-up. So that was a lot of the sort of foundational work that I did that felt like it needed to be done, needed to be added in for things to make sense. And then I continued working on the bestiary with the stuff that we've written up. We've nearly finished all of the landmass life. If I find the right section, here we go. Yeah, we're now up to 5,338 words for our land-based life forms, and I've had a lot of fun writing about those, writing up all the good ideas you guys came up with. We've got different names in here for them. We've got brief descriptions. The global species section now has our first few things that we know are going to be found across the whole planet. If anybody wants to do drawings, please do so. I love seeing the artwork you guys provide. And speaking of which, I need to go and find the image that Lictor did that is just fantastic. So bear with me for a minute because I don't think I've saved it to my desktop as yet. So I'm going to go and toodle off and find that image because it's adorable and you guys need to see it. Where am I going to find it? Let's go. There it is. There it is. Save image. It's been a week. It's been a very, very busy week. Save that there. And then we're going to go into OBS. We are going to add an image. We're going to call it the Pharaoh Fuzz because that's what it is. We're going to grab it off the desktop. There it is. Hit OK, and there he is. Look at that boy! Look at that adorable boy! So this guy is a little slug fella that is very hot and uses his mouth parts to grind up the rock and the like that he moves across. And he's very dangerous to eat, and his shell is metallic. He has a metallic sort of luminescent shell, and Lictor drew this for us. So I will have to make sure that he gets written up in the near future. And Aiden is giving us more adorables to look at with Puppy Cam if he can get it stable. Oh, look at those babies! Look at those puppies! You want to stick fridge magnets on it? You could absolutely stick fridge magnets on it. Precious little beans. That works. There we go. And we've got Anka at the top of the screen, Lupa in the middle, and Virgil at the bottom. And they are getting big. They are getting so big. And Virgil's family are coming to see him on Sunday, so that will be lovely. Big Babs, absolutely. Very big Babs. All right, we're going to turn off the adorable Ferrophuz. We've had a wonderful chance to see him. All right, so that leads us into the things that we need to generate this week. If I move back up to here. One of the things I desperately need you guys to help me with. What is the plural of Shoal going to be? If we're talking about the peoples of Shoal or something that comes from Shoal, is it going to be Shoalnian? Is it going to be Shoalnan? Shoalik? Shoalcan? Shoalaic? What are we going to do with our plural for Shoal? Shoalians? Shoalan? Shoalai? No, we're not going with Shaolin. Shoalite. Okay, I think we might need to do a poll for this so you guys can choose. Okay. What is the plural of Shoal? And if I bring up chat on my other screen, I can add in all of your suggestions. So we have Shoalnian, we have Shoalite, we have Shoaly, we have Shoalsian. We are not doing Shoal Malama Ding Dongs. Of course that was you, Corbin. Shola. Okay, I have run out of spaces. Alright, we'll see what this comes up with. And no, I'm not going to turn on Goob voting for this. Alright, 2 minutes. Make your opinions known, chat. Because that's going to make doing some of the writing I've been doing a hell of a lot easier when I know what, word I'm supposed to be using. Shoalian still has a good ring to it, methinks. Yeah, I mean, all of the ideas can work, which is why it's been such a problem. So yes, if you are only listening to this as, sort of podcast, because a lot of this is just me talking, please click over to your screens now. Vote now. I believe in you, chat. You can choose the things. I love the fact that the puppies have just decided to wander off camera again.
Well, let me go and
No, you're fine. You're fine.
damn it, puppies! You're making my job hard.
Shoalite can also be good. Yep. Pronounce it without the T. We've definitely got some good options. I'm very interested to see which you guys think we should go with. I like Shoal, but it needs to end with a double. Shoaly, but it needs to end with a double I. Okay. That's how you were thinking. Okay, so if Shoaly wins, then we're going to put 2 I's on the entry that becomes... What, would it be pronounced Shoaly or Shoalai? Shoaly is 1, Shoalai is 2.
Surely I.
You're not helping, Aiden.
I was actually being sincere about that. But okay.
Shoaly? Okay. We need another vote. Only if it wins. Only if it wins. Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, we have a tie. People must vote. People must vote. Okay, we did get a vote break. Excellent. We got a vote break. So Shoaly is what we're going with, but we want it to have 2 I's on the end, but be pronounced Shoaly. Is that correct? Both E and I are valid pronunciation. It's a regional accent. Very well. I like that. That was much more involved. I love it. Yep. Could be to groups from the different continents. I is Quinless preference. Okay, so it can be pronounced either way. Both are correct. I like that. That's good. Okay, so we now know what our plural is going to be, and that will make a lot of the things I've been writing a heck of a lot easier. So we know that it is Shoal. Okay. So we wanted to talk about... Okay, there was something that Ed Gauss brought up in the Discord chat. I copy-pasted it over here because I think it's pretty cool, and I want to hear what you guys think about it, as I think there's a lot of good ideas in here. So I'm...
Before you do, I interrupt to comment. Does that mean that there's a Cirque du Soleil?
Get out. Leave. Go. Banned. Okay, so Ed had to say, "Hey all, I've been chugging away for the past 3 weeks on humans in the Shoal setting and what that all entails, which is basically a Minning setting all its own. I'm going to murder you two if I hear any more of that nonsense in the background."
That was Silicon Soul.
Okay, Silicon Soul, I'm going to hurt you instead.
Silicon beat me to it.
Oh, smack Aiden lightly. I will smack Aiden heavily once stream is over. I will throw things at him.
I have been walloped.
Oh my god, Blackfire. I hate all of you. You guys are terrible. Right, I'm going to be sensible. I'm going to read what Ed had to say. So, the humans in Shoal will basically be a mini setting all its own. While I'm not ready to dump my full thoughts on the subject, I have a few suggestions as to the fundamental nature of humans as they encounter the Mern system. Humans should never be the focus of the story. Shoal is about the ecology of Shoal, and while this may mirror the ecology of Earth, the spotlight should always be on Shoal. I personally agree with that. I have no issue with there being humans in some of Shoal's stories. Not you know, that my word is the be-all, end-all. This is a community setting, but I do think that would be a wise way to take it, is Shoal is only just beginning, you know, sort of near space expansion and travel, because of just how dangerous their system is. And it's going to be just as dangerous for humans coming into the setting. And, you know, we built Shoal to be about Shoal. So if we're bringing humans in, it should be a sort of periphery thing. The focus should always try to be on the setting that we've built. If humans are ever made protagonists, the story should revolve around something from Shoal at minimum. Kind of obvious stuff, but worth remembering when building for the humans. I completely agree with that. Humans would make great narrators and neutral observers. A human observer could bridge the gap between the weirdness of Shoal and our 21st century experience, directly comparing and contrasting Shoal to Earth. Even if Earth is a myth to the human, that human would still be part of an ecosystem and a culture derived from Earth. So if it's, you know, a human from a colony that's never actually been to Earth, humanity's always going to have somewhat of a grounding in Earth, because that's where we will always have come from. So I think that's a good point to bring forwards as well. And, you know, I don't think it should be something we go into too much detail if we're writing stories for Shoal. So at the moment, I'm very much on board with this, but the whole thing of humans would make great narrators and neutral observers, this goes back to what we were talking about with why Monster Hunter World worked so well, is this concept of having someone who doesn't know as that sort of link between the reader and the strange new world. That's a very easy way to bridge that gap and to allow for lots of show and tell that feels natural. Stuff core heritage use or something use. That's a good analogy. Humans are the fries to the burger of Shoal. Humans don't need to be in Shoal, and focus should be on the building of Shoal and Earthos, but the humans add a lot to the setting. Yeah, I think that's a really good comment to make. Humans will make great narrators for Shoal stories because it gives the audience a point of view they can relate to easily. Absolutely. It makes all of this they would be a great medium to allow for, you know, audience engagement with where we want things to be with our stories. Humans should be as recognizable as possible. If we're going to use them in that capacity, I agree. This is as much about power level as it is relating to the audience. If humans are too advanced, solutions become technobabble and robs us of the opportunity to study the conditions on Shoal via engineering challenges 21st century humans can recognise. We don't have to go too deep into the scientific weeds, but I think we want to aim more for something like The Expanse or Babylon 5 rather than Star Trek in terms of human technology, to effectively contrast Shoal with Earth. I think that's a really good idea, and Ed does bring up the important point that that's a bit of a hang-up because, of course, faster than light travel will be required, but that's beyond us right now. And I think the easiest way to bridge that is that humanity has only recently discovered faster than light travel and is still exploring what they can do with it. And perhaps one of the early experimentations with faster than light travel brought them all the way out to Shoal unintentionally, and that's sort of where we're at. So at that point, we're not going to be having tons of technology based around the fact that faster than light travel is now possible for humanity. So humanity isn't that much further advanced, but they are that little bit more advanced that allows for them to be in the setting.
I've got two possible thoughts on this.
Go for
actually.
it. What are your thoughts?
One is that means that you could very feasibly have the setting establish as the event horizon arrives at Shoal, maybe with less, oh god, nightmare fuel, but, the prototype jump ship arrives.
What, you want to keep your eyes where we're going?
Indeed. Two, and I know we've referenced Subnautica a lot, but there's an alternative that you could look at as far as the reason why you don't have advanced super tech from humanity getting too involved is because, as established, Shoal's system is very dangerous. Only small specialized vessels can actually make it to the planet, lest they get fried by the radiation, smashed by the space rocks, or otherwise destroyed. So you're just not going to have more than small groups of humans with a very limited resource pool. Which
makes sense for what you're talking about, but that would still, if you're making very specialized vessels that can get through all of those problems and etc., and you're only sending small groups, you're still intimating that the technology is more advanced back home. And I don't think that's necessarily the route that we're looking to go down.
Yeah, fair enough.
Humans arrived at Shoal due to a random warp jump. That's the sort of thought I have in mind. With new FTL, that would also make sense. Ed, I'd love to hear what idea you had in mind. Please do post it in chat. This could be resolved. The rest of the galaxy runs on technobabble, but the coral gives Shoal a technology base so unique the tech from the wider world is ineffective. Absolutely, Wilf, but we're going into the same thing there that I was just saying to Aiden, is that what you're doing there is you're still giving humanity a more advanced technology sphere back home that they'll relate to. And I don't necessarily think that will behoove, what we're talking about in terms of keeping humanity's tech level very familiar to us in the real world, as that sort of bridging the gap. If you bring in that cultural concept that there is technobabble out there, it just can't make it to Shoal, that's still going to affect the culture of the humans that we bring in. Suggestion for the reason why Shoal is so inaccessible: the gravitational forces around Shoal make it a trip to get there take so long that very few think it's worth the trip. That's absolutely going to be one of the things that is an issue. It's like going to Jupiter. When we look at the real world and the spacecraft that we're putting out into the great wide expanse ourselves, most of our spacecraft that we've sent up to investigate our solar system avoid Jupiter. We only go but so close and in certain directions and at certain times, because Jupiter's magnetosphere is so large it stretches all the way out to Saturn's rings on its tail end. It's I think 10 times the size of the planet, larger than the sun in terms of its magnetosphere, and all of that is trapping radiation. Most of the radiation that's trapped around Jupiter is spewed out from the moon Io, but it also collects particles from the solar wind passing by. And because Jupiter's so big, it just holds it there, and that's the Van Allen belts. And if we send technology that we're capable of making on our planet through that field, through the Van Allen belts, just in passing through it once as fast as possible, is something like, I think it was 10 million dental x-rays all at once that the electronics are exposed to. And, you know, that causes some issues. So I think we've got a spacecraft going out that way sometime soon that's actually planning on dealing with that problem to get closer to Jupiter than we normally do. But, you know, getting to Shoal is a problem with a capital P. Hello, Doctor Who. Good to see you. When it comes to human tech level, I keep thinking of the clunky and worn spaceships of Alien or 2001 Space Odyssey. I would love to have that very sort of working class functional tech as something that we're looking at. It would be a very contrasting concept to use, because if we're going to use sort of very sleek, aquatic, technological styles for the people of Shoal, which we will have to because of where we're doing all of this, if we're building, you know, these very sleek designs that are designed to move through the water and have to deal with fluid dynamics, contrasting that with very bulky, blocky human tech, I think would be a really good visual way of doing things if we decide to do art for the setting. So I think that could be a good way to go.
Cassette futurism.
Cassette futurism, yes. Perhaps we're actually just next door across a psychic ley line, and the coral itself is how we were able to get there at all. That could be something. Do we want it to be that perhaps humanity has developed faster than light travel because humanity has just discovered some degree of psionic potential, and perhaps that limits the number of ships that can get out there? I'd absolutely love to hear chat's thoughts. For reasons, details I was still working on, my thoughts were that FTL is lost tech to the remote human colony in the Battletech sense. I was playing with the idea that FTL tech was understood by AI, which humans were trying to escape. Interesting. Yeah, so we've got a lot of options here. I think all of them are fairly viable. It's just which do we want to go down? And I do think we're going to have to make that decision at some point. But humanity isn't the focus of Shoal, so that can be something that we think on for a week or two if we want to. And you know, we'll focus a little bit more on Shoal's people today. That's what I really wanted to get my teeth into with you guys. But Ed did have that really cool comment that he made, and I did want to make sure that got mentioned. Kate Mon, welcome to the channel. Does the belt reach Mars? Mars is safer than because the sun with its solar winds is always pushing things out. So Jupiter's magnetosphere is shaped like a tadpole with the tail stretching away from it all the way out to Venus because of the influence of the sun. So Mars is somewhat more protected. I don't know. I don't think it passes into the magnetosphere of Jupiter at any point. Not even on the periphery, but I'd have to check. I am not a space expert by any stretch of the imagination. I know just enough to be confidently incorrect. Okay, so we've got things to think about. You know, we will revisit the humans and what we want to do about FTL travel. I think another week. Maybe not next week, but the week after. Give you guys some ideas to think on that. But our merfolk, I do think we need to start writing down some ideas of what we want to do with our races of Shoal. We know we've got the different seas. Do we want it to be that each sea has its own culture that lives there? Or do we want to break up our sentient peoples in a different way? We can also talk about what they're going to look like. I can see Doctor Who is mentioning hermit crab people. We certainly could. I mean, that is something we need to think about, is what is the biology of our merfolk going to be like, and how radically different is it going to be in different areas? Is it a case of perhaps some of our deeper sea or maybe shallow sea people? We can do it case by case, yep. Do we want to have people with an exoskeleton? Does that limit how big they get compared to their non-exoskeleton cousins? Are they all descended from a common ancestor or not? Pip is staging a jailbreak, for the record.
Oh,
Will's
no,
on it. Will's on it.
He's breaking in. That's because I let Saris in. So I was going to make the observation that you get generally differences based on a couple things, but it's usually, at least in human history, shared language, shared geography, and shared ethnicity. Basically, people that look like you, live in the same place as you, and speak the same lingo as you are where you get a lot of the dividing lines in cultures, because there's that, collective identity to gather around.
Yep.
So you can add with Shoal if
Hang on,
you're
I've
multiple
written down
species.
language there twice. What were the three things you said?
Geography, language, and then ethnicity, or
Ethnicity.
in our case, species.
Yeah.
So it would make sense to have different cultures based on, some combination of those
Yeah,
factors.
where those factors become significant. Okay.
Yep.
Seas and layers would be good distinctions for people. Crag people could be in the shallows or on the sea floor. Would some of them be bipedal for the islands? I think being bipedal would be interesting. My personal thoughts when I was thinking about if we perhaps had some Shoalian people or Shoalai people who'd moved onto land, is whether they perhaps would move like gorillas do and maybe knuckle walk, but also have the ability to stand upright as part of their evolution, going from sea to land, or what we'd want to do with that. That was a thought that I had, but I'm very, very happy to hear all the ideas you guys have. Rites of passage for shelled sentience. That could be interesting, yeah. If hermit crab people, they use mechs-like shells, that could certainly be something that would be very interesting if we go with that. So, we know chat loves crabs. You guys adore crabs. So I think one of the things that would be really interesting that we can justify in this setting is a crab people race. They have exoskeletons. They are smaller than some other sentient species. They come in what's the word I'm going to want for this? They come in I'm just going to use different kinds for now, and I will find appropriate words for it later. They come in two different kinds. Shallows. Phenotype. I'll do it later. Shallows, crab people, and deep ocean floor crab people. One of these cultures, or both, might view mechs as a form of transcendence, as they can be used in place of a shell. Okay, let's see what else we have, chat, that you want to put in. Okay, I'm going to have to fight you. You guys are talking too quickly. I cannot keep up. Right. Shallows, deep dwellers, open waters, and dark ones. Ooh. Okay, right. Let me catch up to where I got to. Legs or just tails? Oh, we could do both. Crab people are smaller. I was wondering if our merfolk are monofin, duofin, or multifin. We could have all of those. We could have all of those as different things. We could divide people by the depth at which they live. There's a lot more difference between deep sea and shallow water animals in real life, and it's much harder to move up or down than it is to cover long distance around the world. Absolutely. And I think it's going to be important for us to have some concept of evolutionary pressure in terms of, and we've mentioned this before, maybe our deep sea sentient species don't really rely on eyesight and may not even have eyes, whereas our shallow species absolutely would. I can see the most mer race being divided between shallows, deep dwellers. Yeah. I definitely want to pick that up because I think that's going to be something that's going to be important. So let me stick that into the program. I did see somebody asked a little while back what this program is. The program I'm writing in is called Scrivener. It's not available on Mac, unfortunately, but if you have a Windows PC, it is my go-to writing program for everything. It is designed for creative writing. It has wonderful tools built into it, organizational tools. You get a 30-day free trial where you can use it on 30 individual days before the trial expires. It's a very reasonable price, and if you do decide to pick it up, you own the program for life. It is not a subscription service. Scrivener started on Mac. It might have been Linux then that it wasn't on, that somebody was mentioning last week. I apologise if I got that wrong, but I love Scrivener. I absolutely adore it. I use it all the time. We are not sponsored by them. I just love the program that much. So very, very much recommend Scrivener. Okay, shallows, deep dwellers, open waters, and dark ones. Okay, so when we write them up, that will be the sort of bands that we put these different peoples into. Yes, dark ones as abyss dwellers that perhaps don't have eyes, I think would make a lot of sense. And I think one of the cultural pressures that maybe we'll focus on Shoal is not a disparity within the individual species, but between species, because you're going to have that pressure of multiple different sentient strains. Okay, let's see, what else have we got that you guys have said? Geographic areas, even among the same species, adaptation to environmental pressures. Yep. I was also thinking that if they were primarily monofinned, they would have to be like snakes on the beaches. That could be interesting, as if we do that. Crab people should be heavy and big, since they would historically be a race that lives on the bottom. They need to resist ocean currents to stay in one place. Okay. How do we justify big crabs in terms of pressure, and exoskeletons can only get but so big? I think one of the ways we could solve that is perhaps we have our deep crab people are big, but their shells are very heavy because they use more sturdy elements to build their shells, and perhaps they build their shells, and perhaps that affects their diet.
It might be, yeah, they're made of more dense material.
Yeah. Because we do, I mean, we have the adorable ferroslug that makes an iron shell, so why can't we have that with our people?
Also, you gave me an idea when you were reading out the, monofin with no limbs having to move like snakes. Their designs would be based on that. The idea of legs in their construction would be maybe alien to them until they start getting imports from the crabmen.
Yep, and of course we have an example of how that would work in terms of Naga.
Yep. Crabmen would import leg technologies because they would have a better understanding of the mechanics of how to make a limb that can function against pressures, currents, and other assorted things.
Okay, that's definitely something to think about.
That almost makes it sound like the crab people are the dwarves of the setting.
I will put that suggestion. Oh, I just did not mean to do that. Sorry for messing up PubCam. Give me a minute.
Doc likes it.
There we go. Dwarves.
It makes sense
Of
because
the
they would have
setting.
to be heavier, denser than their others, which would make them sturdier but slower.
Right, let's see what else chat has had to say that I have not yet read. Eel folk, supposedly the favourite of the daughter of eels, but called children of the eight coil by those who dislike them. I'm not going to throw lore in just yet, because until we decide what we've got, but we will obviously come back to that as we build culture. And I know you've got some really good ideas, Eric, and if they all get written down, there's something that we can go over with chat when we get to that point. And I very much want to, but we'll figure out what we've got first. Crustacean shelled shells have several subgroups, originally starting deep in the oceans as scavengers who eventually evolve to use tools and migrate in waves out of the deeper seas. I like that idea. Dwarves of the setting. Deep sea crab folk came first before some evolving to shallower waters. Okay, so they're going to have a common ancestor for that particular race. Okay, let's see what else we got. Shallows, more ape-y. Deep dwellers, I don't know, more dolphin-y. Open waters, more fishy. Dark ones live in deep seas and more angular nature. Okay, we'll come to that in just a minute. Crab people are hyper-intelligent crabs. Passionate for crabs. Yes, you guys are crab obsessed. Deep sea folk would have big guppy eyes to see better in the depths, giving them uncanny looks. I don't know if that would work, Tired German, because for a large portion of the year, there is no light on Shoal, because we don't have the standard day-night cycle, we don't have a standard seasonal cycle. We know that for a very, very long portion of the year, there is just not going to be any light in the depths, other than perhaps the bioluminescent life forms that live down there. But if it's anything like bioluminescence on our world, that light only travels but so far. So I just have a feeling like deep sea folk would make more sense not to have eyes, and that it's perhaps the shallow water folk that have an evolutionary benefit from eyesight. I'm obviously very interested in hearing what you guys have to say on that, but that's where my personal thought process is. Oyster squid people, they have a history of traversing deeper waters, carrying news cargo beyond the borders. I like the idea of squid people in particular with, you know, multiple lower limbs that are just totally not designed to go on land at all.
They make more sense than fish people because one of the most important things for sentient life is tool use.
Yep.
Crabs and squid and octopi have limbs
Squid
capable
people.
of manipulating
Their
objects.
multiple limbs make them excellent tool users, which has allowed them to colonize many areas of Shoal's oceans. So perhaps squid people are pretty common. Alright, let's see what else we've got coming in. Scrivener's good software. Yep, I love Scrivener. You like Obsidian better, Cookie Mama? Perfectly valid. Free and plugins out the tail. Yep, if Obsidian works for you, perfectly valid. My heart belongs to Scrivener from the day I first picked it up, so I'm a creature of habit and I love it, but all on board for people trying out other things. May have started in the corals if they are squid, since they need the nooks to hide in. Yeah, that's a good idea. That's a good idea. Let's throw that idea in. Started out as a coral living species, and Aiden is running in with a good idea. We'll see how good it is.
So that leads back into what I was talking about with the crab technological exports of limb making technology. If that be the case, the squids would make a perfect shoe-in for being the ones who initially cultivated and developed the usage of the coral for, you know, direct operator interface, or, you know, computational power, processing power, power generation. And that's
Yep.
where you get multiple different industries that interact with each other. And while maybe the crabs are better at harvesting it because of their ability to tolerate impacts and their ability to use the clamps, they aren't the ones who first evolved in the vicinity of the stuff, so it took them longer to figure out how to use it.
And that then gives us some reason for sort of mutual trade back and forth and interaction. So yeah, we will absolutely go with that. All right, let me catch up on more stuff from chat. Big crabs equals deeper. Okay. Coral reinforced. Coral, yeah. Crabs equals dwarves. Yeah, I'm glad you like that, Doctor Who. Pressure is not necessarily a problem for an animal that contains no air pockets at all. Fluid is not compressible, so a crab person that is entirely solid and fluid filled would not be crushed by water pressure. Awesome. There are areas of science that do not always immediately come to mind, and as I say, I know enough about things to be confidently incorrect. So thank you for that clarification, Wilf. If the ferrophus eats different metal compositions, does that affect the shell? If it eats galena, there's silver and copper. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. For a lot of our animals that are going to live on Shoal, their shells are going to be affected by what they're directly eating to build them. And in the section that I've currently finished, all of the animals that I've written up, quite a few of them have that quirk where their colours are dictated by that. The crab peoples would have best access to the living refineries. Yep. It went octopus. Okay, yep, so squid / octopus people. Okay, let me make that adjustment. Cephalopeople. I like that. Like, they must have a cephalopope. Shallows would be the people that breach the waves, most often have the best lungs adapted for low tides, with a fascination of the sky. I think that's a really good idea. I'm thinking we need some sort of like Naga equivalent, because that would, we've already talked about monofin evolving to the earth, the idea of slithering, needing still to have that connection with the peoples under the water for some of the things that they might need, and evolutionarily on Earth, when the lung first developed, it developed in a lizard species. So something that's sort of around that would be pretty cool. So we will have a streamlined serpent Naga people that live on land as well as in the water. So perhaps they're a coastal species. Maybe they also build ships. Maybe they also have floating communities. Maybe they're the more nomadic people. Just some ideas for us to think about.
Ones that have managed to make ambulatory reefs of radiotropic vegetable life.
Maverick began the crab obsession. Okay, I know how to go and punch. The open water smurfolk would have to be nomadic in nature, cultivating, harvesting, and breeding schools of fish. Yep, I think that's going to be very much a thing. Definitely nomadic people makes sense for the world that we're building. I wonder how common saltwater oceans are on other planets. I don't know. I imagine that's kind of the normal way of doing things, considering a lot of water arrives on various planets from space. Scylla peoples, that's a Greek thing, right? Is the water even salty? Yes, we know that the water is salty in some areas. It's more salty than on Earth because that's how it stays fluid despite the cold temperatures Shoal often endures, because it doesn't always get light from its host star because, there's a stonking great gas giant in the way. Dark ones, eyeless or very dim underdeveloped eyes. On water or magnetosense. Yeah, and of course we can utilize echolocation. Very much we can use echolocation. When we get to talking about language, I think we're going to have a really interesting conversation about how that's going to work. Pale ghostly white, perhaps made into ghost stories or boogeymen for shallower peoples. What sort of body plan do we want our deep ones to have? Squid folk as trader crafter type people. Travel across the regions especially. I reckon that we're going to see the most variance in the culture between our squid and octopus people, with perhaps some of them having dedicated homesteads along the Silver Current, some of them being traveling traders, some of them being, very attached to certain coral areas. If they grew up in the coral and evolved with the coral presence, I feel like that's where we're probably going to see our most variance in one particular sentient species. Maybe young punk kids of some races go from deep to shallow water quickly to get a bubble high. When we get to culture and we start to find that, I'm really looking forward to writing all that sort of stuff out. Naga are moray eel people. That's a good idea. We'll borrow from the moray eel.
Vice is always fun to create when you're developing a culture or a society in a writing.
Yes. Thank you, babies. They agree. Okay, what else have we got? Crabs. We should play with crabs right now. Earthsea is salty because Earth is salty and salt is soluble in water. We're on a salt ball. Fair. We know we're going to need the salt on Shoal for the water to stay water. So we've definitely got that issue going on. Squid coral ranchers? Absolutely. Absolutely. I do think we're going to see a lot of variance in them there. Okay, it is 2 minutes to 5. Do you guys have any last thoughts? We can always come back to this next week for putting in some more races and what they're going to be like. I will try to get the ones we've already come up with written up this week. I will do my best, but I make no promises. I have a lot going on. I always have a lot going on. We still need most of the non-crab people to have appendages that allow manipulation. Oh yeah, we're not going to make it so that they don't have, you know, end effectors, natural end effectors. But crab people, I think, will have a unique understanding of the different ways that you can use joints and reinforce joints against different pressures to make them able to, you know, have something to trade with the other races and a knowledge base all their own. Corbin is still being very helpful with the Shomalama Ding Dongs. I'm seeing most of the mer peoples having arm equivalents. Yeah, it just wouldn't work if they didn't. They will have arm equivalents.
So I just have to say, because there was the comment that the Cephala people need to have a Cephalopope, when they try and convert the other species to their religion, do they go Shoal?
I'm going to just start hitting you after stream, and I'm not really sure when I'll stop. If you hold him for me, I won't also hit you. I will forgive you for your sins this day.
Does that mean that Shillelagh is a go?
No, but it means I won't hit you for it.
Will here in the background suggesting the Shillelagh.
Where water comes from is a bit of an unknown. Protoplanets are probably too hot for surface water to survive, and there's a theory that all water on a planet's surface came from comets crashing into it. The salt comes from minerals dissolving into it. Fun fact, the seas get saltier over time, and our blood is the same salinity as the sea was at the time life first appeared. We have fossil seas in our veins. That's amazing, Wilf! That is absolutely fascinating. I am not hitting Will for your sins. I'm saving your sins up for the next time I see you, Corbin. You're going to go home with like 90% of your bones broken. It's fine.
Can I help?
Yes, you can help.
Yay!
Then you're getting your bones broken afterwards. All right. The seer nonsense aside, it is 5 o'clock, which means we are technically at the end of my time slot, and while we get a little bit of wiggle room because Tex and Dep don't take over until 5:30, we're going to be good spacemen and make sure we get out of here somewhere around the right time, because I really don't want to have to go to work in the cargo mines. Or at the age where you might actually fix my joint issues. If it fixes your joint issues and you go on to cause more shenanigans, it'll be worth it. Wookie had a comment? Did I miss it? I will go up. Oh, do we have anything like salmon and eels that migrate from freshwater to salt and back again? Perhaps there is a race that can do that for some reason, depending on the time of life. We'd have to figure out why that would be the case, but it's certainly an interesting idea. Absolutely an idea. Move freight, don't die. Miners don't die. Yes, these are all very important things. And ultimately, be a good spaceman. And yeah. I think we're going to close out the slot. I may have written a thing. I'll send it to you in the Shoal things. Yes, please. Always feel free to contact me through the Orcs Discord. You're also welcome to DM me. I don't get annoyed by people DMing me on my Lady Red account. I love seeing the things you guys come up with and sharing them each week. This has been a very, very fun project so far, and I can see it keeping us going for a long time. Okay, we are at just gone 5 o'clock. Tex and Dep are up next. I haven't heard anything to the contrary. You'll have a bit of time until 5:30 to use the restroom, get yourself some drinks, prepare for shenanigans. There are many things you could be doing to start your weekend, and I'm very touched that 48 of you have chosen to spend that time here with me and my strange wittering and the crazy things that we come up with and enjoying the Beagle babies. Please post the merfolk text so I can illustrate them. Absolutely. I will try to, what I'll try to do, Tired German, tomorrow I will try to do the write-up for the peoples that we've invented today, and then I'll update the PDF and let you know that I've done it, and then you'll have access to that information, and you can start doing some more of your wonderful illustrations. I'm very much looking forward to the end of the year where we'll be looking at illustrating a document and making it look more like a supplement, which will be really fun. Needs more shark people? I am down for having some shark people. That would make absolute sense. We'll talk about some more races next week, so if you guys come up with any ideas that you think for more sentient races that should be around, you know, make a note, leave them in the chat, save them for next week, and we will go over them then. Anything you want to say, Aiden, before we get out of here and give these people their weekend back?
Nothing that won't make you hit me. Because
Then
it's
being
probably gonna be more
silent is
Shoal
in your
puns.
best bet. Next week, I am hoping to talk about the wonderful Sir Terry Pratchett and his incredible works. I'm going to try and drag Lictor on board to come and join me and talk about that as well. And yeah, I hope to see you here. Have a wonderful weekend, chat, and thank you for coming.
Meanwhile, I must shoulder my burden of silence.
And with that, we're leaving.